This is undoubtedly the most difficult review I've ever had to write. When I began reading these comics, I was met with so many emotions. One issue, I feel like I'm losing my mind. The other, delighted with some surprisingly fantastic stories, and always laughing, whether that was the author's intention or not. Archie Sonic the Hedgehog comics have some of the biggest memes in the fanbase, but I honestly wanted to give them a fair shot. Present the best of what they have to offer for those who don't know where to start reading them, or only have a vague curiosity about it all. So before we truly begin, I want to preface this. I'm not going to be reviewing every single issue of Archie Sonic. Rather, I'm only going to be focusing on either the most important issues to the overall comic canon, or the best of what each writer's run has to offer. So without any further ado, let's begin. If you're new here, hi, my name's Nicholas, but it's Nick for short, and I review games, comics, basically whatever I want, so let's get the show on the road. The first 30-odd issues of this comic I am skipping over. Now, although that may sound absolutely insane, the truth is, they simply aren't important. The Archie series of Sonic comics utilize the groundwork laid by Sonic SatAM, so I think it's most appropriate I summarize the basics for those who haven't seen that show and take it from there. This is Sally Acorn, Princess of the Kingdom of Acorn, which has been taken over by the evil Dr. Robotnik. Robotnik sieges the entire kingdom, banishing the king, Sally's father, and Nagus to the void, as well as transforming all other living organisms into robots with his roboticizer. What was once the lush kingdom of Acorn is now the dark, desolate Robotropolis. Sally, on the other hand, leads her resistance from a secret safe haven deep within the forest known as Knothole, and she has a crew of her own, the Freedom Fighters. Rotor the Walrus is both the muscle and brains of the operation. Bunny Rabbit, half roboticized, uses her cybernetic aspects to her advantage. Antoine is the cowardly swordsman who does his best. Of course, there's Nicole as well. She's essentially the Jarvis of the group and Sally's handheld computer. Lastly, we have Tails, who isn't the genius we know of today quite yet, rather just Sonic's little brother with a nice brain on his shoulders. Those are the essentials you need to know for the Archie canon for both the pre- and post-Genesis Wave era, and considering lots of these stories only require that level of knowledge given their self-contained nature, I'll do my best to emphasize the important status quo changes. But with all of that background out of the way, let's get on to the real review. The first story we'll be covering is the Mecha Madness saga. The story begins in Knothole at a meeting. Sonic is talking about potentially, willingly roboticizing himself while using one of Rotor's neuro overriders to keep his mind intact. This will allow him to get the boost that the mechanical features will offer while still being able to fight the right fight. Obviously, however, Sonic is met with nothing but resistance. Rotor brings up how Sally already tried that and it didn't really go well. And Bunny tries to reason with him by showing him the consequences that robotization has. If it wasn't for Sonic saving her, she'd be far worse off than her current half-metal state. Before Sonic can fight back any longer, Sally tells him it's pointless, as the plan has been unanimously voted against. One thing that I really like about this is how it establishes the characters. I know that for a lot of newer fans, you don't have any context that, well, I do. I've watched every episode of Sonic SatAM countless times as a kid, and I have all that knowledge ironed into my brain, so for my viewers who are totally lost, here's my advice and just a little comic book knowledge. My advice is simple. Give it a few issues, and you're gonna get to know the basics of who these characters are, and get to know their dynamic pretty well. Although that may sound like a stupid no-duh kind of answer, I genuinely mean it. Most of the time in long-running comic series, writers tend to re-establish things. Maybe a character starts off with a monologue or an interaction that happens to set the tone. Basically, they like to set the status quo so the reader can pick up on any changes since they last read the series, or if they're brand new. And that is something I am particularly grateful for whenever it comes to Archie Sonic, but we'll get to that later. Let's get back to the story. Sonic heads to the weight room to blow off some steam, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say. But before he can get some serious gains, he's knocked out and subsequently kidnapped by the one, the only, Knack the Weasel. Knack gloats to Sonic about how he remembers him well, and Knuckles from their last encounter, which this text box tells us was in the Triple Trouble special issue. And now he's making good on his failed deal with Robotnik to bring Sonic to Robotropolis. With Sonic the Hedgehog delivered to Robotnik, the devilish mastermind sets his plan into action. No gloats, no speeches, just action. Knack is none too pleased with this, as he demands his payment, but the Lord of Lard puts him in his place by supersizing a crab meat, which promptly scares him off. And now, the madness begins. Sonic has been roboticized and turned into Mecha Sonic. This seems like as good a place as any to mention the artist for this issue, Patrick Spazzante, otherwise known as Spaz. He is easily one of the most iconic artists to ever touch the Sonic comics, and that reputation is definitely deserved. The expressiveness shown in these issues is fantastic, and the overall quality of the artwork is astounding. I especially love this artwork, and my words just can't do it justice. That, and although I'm not sure if he's directly responsible for the Mecha Sonic design, I love it nonetheless. The blocky, early classic aesthetic gives him a real Badnik vibe. His limbs are a lot more clunky and armored, which is great for giving greater impact whenever it comes to close quarters combat, and the sleek design of the quills and ears is great for keeping Sonic's most iconic characteristics, but making them feel threatening. As Mecha Sonic rushes to Knothole, Sally, Rotor, and Antoine see him approaching. Sally tells Nicole to execute maneuver DLG-70. Despite their best efforts at avoiding his assault, the trio was running out of options. Luckily, phase 2 of Sally's plan begins. Bunny Rabbit leaps in to save the day. Although the battle was well fought, using every tool in her arsenal, Mecha Sonic is still overpowering Bunny. Knowing the situation is growing graver, Sally calls Tails to activate Phase 3, labeling the situation as Condition Red. Tails sends out the protocol and it is acknowledged on the other end of the line. Robotnik, seeing his creation status, gives him a remote energy boost, allowing the mechanical menace to send Bunny flying to the ground before rushing off to destroy Knothole. Back at home base, we find Tails talking to the last hope against Mecha Sonic. Knock knock, it's Knuckles the Echidna. One thing I found interesting is this interaction here. Knuckles states that he doesn't like to get involved, as he puts it, but he and Sally go way back, which is extremely intriguing. Now, of course, being the thorough reviewer I am, I had to go out of my way to find out what exactly this meant. Unfortunately, I didn't find much with a Google search, but what I did find is that Knuckles' origins are largely the same as what happened back in Sonic 3. Going back to some of the earlier issues, I found that issue 13 is an adaptation of Sonic 3's story. The only difference is that Knuckles is the guardian of a single Chaos Emerald, rather than the Master Emerald. But as far as Tails talking to Knuckles' ancestors, I truly doubt that or his miniseries are very important, especially because even Knuckles says that he has no clue what Tails is talking about. But have no worries, I'm sure that we'll get some Echidna lore in this series very soon. Knuckles flies above to take the fight to the skies. Unfortunately, Knuckles doesn't last very long, and the issue ends as Sally tells the Freedom Fighters it's time to initiate Operation Last Resort. With Knothole evacuated, Rotor brings out a Portabot, a mini roboticizer they salvaged from Bunny's unfortunate accident. Although her chief scientist asks about the moral implications of going through with this, Sally decides they're out of options. It's time to fight fire with fire. Knuckles wakes up in a delirious state, but after a swift backflip kick to the head, the Echidna instantly recognizes the move. Him and Sally briefly reminisce about the past after their sudden reuniting, which gives us insight into the characters' past together. Sally and her father, King Acorn, used to visit Angel Island, so far only labeled as the Floating Island, where she and Knuckles would simply hang on the beach while Knuckles' grandfather was the guardian. Seeing this newfound topic of gossip, Bunny Rabbit was quick to hop back onto her feet. This is the kind of thing that made it so difficult to start this review. Whenever I'm telling you all this information, I am just as familiar with it as you are. Knowing Archie, I'm sure you believe that there's this huge treasure trove of untouched content, but I assure you, that's just not the case. The first 30 issues of the series, like I said, were all comedic shorts or self-contained stories meant for the youngest of children. Looking back through earlier issues, the series has always had this element of a more serious story, starting around issue 20 and after, but those were mainly reserved for game tie-in segments, such as the Sonic CD adaptation in issue 25. I won't lie and say I wasn't nervous putting this review together because I kept on seeing all these cool covers and wondering if the reading guides were wrong and I need to keep going issue by issue thoroughly, but no. As I've said several times, this comic is essentially more Sonic SatAM. Same characters, lore, all of it has been brought over, so these stories are largely self-contained, rarely introducing universe-defining or status quo-changing elements, but rather just taking some of the older, sillier characters from the original comedic run of issues and repurposing them later on. The reason I mention this is because I just don't want you to worry about thinking that, well, maybe you're missing an element of the story and you're going to be lost later on. I promise that's not the case. The reason they're mentioned in the story through dialogue boxes or exposition boxes is to catch me up, which catches you up, so let's continue on. Knuckles, eager as ever to give Sonic a piece of his mind, jumps into the machine, ready and willing to become Mecha Knuckles. As Mecha Sonic destroys the village, Tails is spotted, but Sonic begins to fight back against his programming. Robotnik, not willing to take any chances, demands to know the location of Knothole so he can use one of his countless nuclear warheads to end this rather quickly. But before Mecha Sonic can give the information away, Mecha Knuckles uppercuts into battle. As the characters watch in awe at the spectacle of the battle, Mecha Knuckles gains the upper hand with his knuckle claws. With Mecha Sonic running on minimal power, Mecha Knuckles sends his adversary to the ground using his spin cycle attack. In one last-ditch effort, Mecha Sonic hits Knuckles with all he's got, sending him flying to Robotropolis. Unable to stop, Knuckles, inverting the polarity of his claws, creates a magnetic field, bringing Sonic down with him. The Freedom Fighters see the explosion from Knothole and can't imagine Sonic surviving, bringing tears to his team's eyes. Robotnik hid in shelter to avoid the explosion, but the damage to the city was extensive. In the distance, the Mad Doctor sees something moving in the rubble. What rises is a heavily damaged but repairable Mecha Sonic. Before Robotnik can truly celebrate, Mecha Knuckles greets him with a devastating headbutt. Knuckles reveals to Robotnik that Sonic was still inside these sheets of metal somewhere, seeing as he took the blunt of the assault, selflessly protecting Knuckles. Once Knuckles comes back to the Freedom Fighters, he's brought to Rotor's machine to be de-roboticized. Unfortunately, the machine can only de-roboticize people who itself roboticize. This leaves Rotor and Nicole to figure out how to save Sonic. This whole thing, I just love. So far, Knuckles' characterization has been fantastic. He isn't anywhere near stupid. He's a stoic fighter who knows where his priorities lie, and his duty to help others, specifically Sally and the Freedom Fighters' good fight, is just fantastic. I love his portrayal here. That, and I think this issue does a great job at establishing the rest of the cast for new readers. Bunny Rabbit is aggressively southern and a good fighter who makes her disability her greatest advantage. Rotor is a genius of a gentle giant, and I think that is a very unique trait for a Sonic character. Antoine is just there and petty, but he's never really been too interesting anyway. Tails I enjoy being competent even with his younger age as well. I have a much deeper understanding and personal connection to these characters given my love of the cartoon show, but in later stories everyone gets fleshed out a little more with additional screen time, at least from what I've read. As Knuckles gets ready for the de-robotization, Princess Sally salutes him, something that Bunny takes note of, and Antoine is quite passive-aggressive about. With Tails watching over Knuckles, Sally rushes back to Rotor for an update. Nicole reminds Sally that Sonic recently acquired his 1 billionth magic ring. This ring put a barrier around Sonic's life force, allowing them to save Sonic, but with Rotor's lab trash, Nicole takes matters into her own hands, giving Sonic a serious shock as he erupts with magical energy, restoring his mind and body. The comic ends with Sonic in a hot-headed move, ticking off Knuckles, causing him to fly back to the floating island. Last thing is, Sonic gets arrested. Yes, arrested. All the characters still believe that he irresponsibly went to Robotnik to enact his plan rather than him getting kidnapped as the truth happened. Normally this is wherever I would transition into issue 40 storyline, but I'm not gonna insult you guys. Sonic gets set free, it's very uninteresting, very bland, very not important. Only thing worth mentioning is that yes, Amy is in fact living a knothole with the rest of the cast. These two issues have given me a lot of hope for this series. Given Archie Sonic's reputation, I was seriously anticipating cringe dialogue, awful artwork, just terrible stuff, and no doubt we'll get to that at some point, but these issues were very entertaining. It was a great way to reconnect with these characters after not watching Sonic Sat AM for so long, and for new readers, it naturally gives you all the information you need to get up to speed on who these characters are and the status quo of their world, all delivered through great writing and jaw-dropping artwork. Things may seem tame at the moment, but rest assured that the Mecha Madness arc was merely a representation of what the early issues used to be. This was where the series really started to evolve into a more serious, long-winded tale, and I think that that's what makes it such a fantastic place to start reading these comics after watching Sonic Sat AM. Consider my interest peaked, and my excitement for the next story arc high, especially because I'm fully aware of what comes next. I decided to review the Mecha Madness saga first, because I wanted to familiarize myself with the comic canon and familiarize you all in case you weren't aware of what was going on in the comics, haven't seen Sonic Sat AM, all the reasons that I listed beforehand. But now that we've all experienced a relatively safe story whenever it comes to the Archie Sonic comics, I think that it's about time we start ramping things up. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourself, because next time, things get serious. Status quos will be changing, characters will be going through unforgettable events, and well, let's just say we're in the endgame now. That's right, next time we see each other in the Sonic comic universe, we are going to be tackling the build-up and climax of the first true story arc of Archie Sonic. Prepare yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, because next time we meet, I'm going to be covering issues 46 to 50, the endgame saga of the Archie Sonic comic. I hope to see you there.